Good evening. Obviously, the top story tonight, the Tri-State Crematory. But right now, we want to tell you that also on tonight's broadcast, the latest on the Governor's Cancer Coalition.
And an exclusive interview with Senate Appropriations Chairman George Hooks on Senate plans for the supplemental budget. But again, our lead story, the crematory in North Georgia.
The body count at the Tri-State Crematory in Noble, Georgia has expanded to over 130. It will undoubtedly go higher. So far, Brent Marsh, the owner, has been charged with 16 counts of theft by deception for taking money to cremate bodies, but literally tossing them into backyard vaults. Georgia currently has no law against any of the other unorthodox procedures at the crematory. David Zelski is standing by live in the House chambers with more on this gruesome story. David?
Well, Gerald, this case is getting more bizarre every hour. Some of these bodies were dragged out into the woods, others were just crammed into storage. Now, right now, the time for Mr. Marsh's bond hearing is indefinite, but then so are the charges in their entirety. It began on Friday with an anonymous tip.
The EPA, they came out, they contacted the local authorities here, the Walker County Sheriff's Office, after seeing a skull on the property. That's when they got law enforcement involved.
Leaving family members and neighbors stunned.
You can't do, wrong and expect to get right out of it. So, they're my family, yes, and I love them to death, but, I couldn't imagine the pain that these families are feeling, and that's just horrible. I can't believe it.
I'm shocked like everybody else, and I feel so very sorry and remorseful for these families. They thought they had closure of the death of a loved one, and they did not, and then to have the remains really desecrated is just shocking.
Finding and identifying those bodies are priority number one, but medical examiners compared identifying individuals in the stacks of bodies to putting together 1,000 jigsaw puzzles with the pieces upside down. The vaults where these bodies were stored were no more hidden than this backyard tool shed, but the body count is up to 200, and the search for more bodies continue beyond the vaults.
We had opened one of the vaults and found that it was filled with human remains. The other 4 have been opened now for initial evaluation, and all of those are filled with human remains. I can't even begin to guess at how many bodies may be in those in total. It's just incomprehensible.
The investigation is currently within the state, but this particular crematory dealt with families in 3 states, so federal involvement is very possible very soon. A theft by deception charge currently means 1 to 15 years, but Walker County District Attorney Buzz Franklin is not yet sure if any other type of charge will surface, because Georgia currently has no law against the desecration of corpses that have not been buried.
Once a warrant is taken and executed, it becomes public record, and you can examine that once that's done. As I said, at this point in time, there are 16 warrants that have been taken for theft by deception, and that's all I feel I can comment on.
Now, crematory owner Brent Marsh claims his machinery was not working, and that's why these bodies were not cremated, but some of these corpses date back over 15 years. Reporting live from the House chambers, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
David, this is one of those gruesome stories that brings up a lot of difficult questions. I'm sure some people are wondering what was put in the urns that were given back to the families if it wasn't the remains of their loved ones.
Well, they've checked 51, and many have not had human remains, and they found powdered cement in about 9 of them so far.
All right, David, thank you very much.
And joining us now to talk about this legislation aimed at stopping such grisly acts from happening in the future is Representative Mike Snow from Chickamauga. Representative Snow, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Susan. Glad to be here.
Explain your legislation, if you will.
Well, of course, these terrible tragedies, we were all shocked in Walker County and outraged, of course. But our legislation, we have a glitch in the law. We have a person that's charged, cannot be charged with a felony right now. And basically we have a bill that we introduced in the General Assembly this afternoon that will make it a felony, punishable up to 3 years in the state penitentiary, $20,000 fine for desecrating a body, basically abusing a dead human body. And we also have the legislation also includes making right now, I think crematories can be inspected if they just deal with funeral homes, and if they deal with if they deal with the public. But if they deal with funeral homes, they don't have to be inspected. And we're putting it all together where the funeral homes and the public If they deal with either one, they will be inspected by the state.
Representative Snow, today I talked with George Hooks, the senator who's head of the Appropriations Committee, and he said there might be a possibility that the state would put in the supplemental budget some additional funds to help Walker County bear the expense of this. Are you aware of that, or is there going to be... Go ahead.
There's no doubt the governor has already called the state of emergency, and I want to tell you that the governor's done a wonderful job. The day this thing broke is when he brought the Georgia Emergency Management people up. He brought the GBI, every forensic agent that they've got in the state up there. He brought his governor's Office of Consumer Affairs people up there. The governor has been so responsive. He promised us that that the state would cover most of the expenses. And I do appreciate Senator Hooks offering, if there's any additional expenses that we're going to incur, which I'm sure we will, that our local governments won't have to bear this heavy burden.
Representative Snow, we will keep in touch with you as this story develops. Thank you very much for taking time and joining us on Lawmakers.
Senator Jeff Mullis, who represents Walker County, is also introducing legislation that relates to the tragedy discovered this weekend. His bill would make the abuse of a dead body a felony.
The tragedy that we've had in Georgia, moreover in northwest Georgia. And the sad thing is that families have closed or supposedly closed a chapter on losing a loved one. To have it brutally opened in such a travesty that we have going on in our state today.
Were you surprised when you researched this that there are no laws existing that would cover this situation?
Yes, I think we all were surprised, including the governor. We discovered that no statute regulates or has anything regarding incinerators or mortuaries that would help us with this situation. The only law that the perpetrator has violated at this point is defrauding the people of doing services for being paid cash for or some money for. So we were all surprised, but we're going to take measures today and in the near future to make sure that something like this never happens again.
Senator Mullis, a Republican, tells us that he is willing to cooperate with similar legislation being offered by Representative Mike Snow or by the governor.
In other news, the state Senate today gave final passage to Governor Barnes' bioterrorism bill. It describes in part a governor's power to declare a health emergency in the state. The governor's floor leader spoke for passage of the bill, and Senator Steve Thompson asked the Senate to defeat a Republican amendment that would exempt firearms from items that could be controlled during such an emergency. Thompson cited an agreement Friday when Republicans withdrew a similar amendment.
This bill is more important than any one senator or any one body. This bill is important to 8.5 million people, 300 million people in this country, and billions of people around the world. What we do here and what they do there in every state are intricately locked together. You saw the better side of our system last week. You saw collegiality. You saw people putting political differences aside and very seriously addressing issues important to life and death of men, women, and children. I want the senator that is offering this amendment to come up and explain his reasons, and then I'd like to address that amendment, and I'll explain my reasons in no uncertain terms.
Senator Phil Gingrey offered the amendment to exempt guns. He said it was a constitutional issue. Senator Thompson said the amendment could open the way to gun running. First, here's Gingrey.
But the people that lose are those folks out there in the hall or down there on the street that are marching or calling us on the telephone over the weekend and inundating us with emails and saying, look, we don't care about this business of a Democrat or a Republican or who's in power. We want you, as the senator from the 2nd has said so often from the well during points of personal privilege this session, we want you to represent my people. We want you to represent the people of Chatham County. Well, my people in Northwest Cobb and South Cherokee and all parts in between want me to stand up for their Second Amendment rights. The reason they responded so quickly and efficiently in New York on September the 11th was because they had a plan, and they had a plan that they went over and over and over. I don't think that plan had anything whatsoever to do with confiscating people's weapons.
During a bioterrorist attack or a military attack, the last thing you need are people running guns. And there will be those people. And they'll be selling to all the wrong folks. Nothing in this bill talks about your personal weapon.
The Gingrey Amendment won 44-7. Then the bill passed with 2 dissenting votes. We'll probably see the gun issue revisited when the bioterrorism bill heads to the House.
Senate leadership has pledged bipartisan support for a measure to prevent racial profiling. Wandi Lawson is live at the Capitol with our story. Wandi.
Well, Susan, the September 11th tragedy has law enforcement and lawmakers debating the merits of using race and ethnicity as factors in conducting stops, searches, and investigations. Senate leadership from both parties has forged a partnership against racial profiling, but some say their measure will not end the practice. It's not every day that Democrats and Republicans agree on a bill, and it's even less frequent that the Senate majority and minority leaders co-sponsor legislation. But Senators Eric Johnson and Charles Walker believe that a bipartisan effort is necessary to end racial profiling.
The Senate Majority Leader and I have joined together to ban the use of race solely for traffic stops by law enforcement. There's a growing acknowledgement, even from those of us in the white race, that law enforcement may be abusing that civil right, that somebody shouldn't be stopped for the color of their skin.
I think both of us realize that it's time that we address the issue of racial profiling, especially in light of September 11th. We got to make sure that we protect American citizens, but at the same time, we cannot run the risk of what we have in this country. In the northeastern part of the United States, 74% of those people who are stopped for drug crimes are African American. Now, something is wrong with that picture when we only make up 13% of the total population.
But not everyone believes their measure goes far enough.
That bill has a loophole that you can drive a truck through.
While the Johnson-Walker measure prohibits officers from making certain use of race in motor vehicle stops, Senator Vincent Fort has introduced a bill to prevent all use of race or ethnicity.
Our bill says that you cannot stop someone because of their race or ethnicity, period.
Fort wants to outlaw the use of race in any place in law enforcement. I think that hampers law enforcement.
Now, Senator Fort's bill also requires officers to document the race, ethnicity, and gender of those who they stop, and also to attend yearly cultural sensitivity training. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Wandi Lawson for Lawmakers.
And Wandi, do the sponsors of these bills see any room to negotiate one single piece of legislation against racial profiling?
Tell you what, Susan, not right now. The issue of how much restraint law enforcement must exercise in making these stops has both sides at odds.
Okay, thanks so much.
Democrats and Republicans exchanged verbal barbs in the Senate today over the governor's Shop Georgia proposal that would create sales tax-free days for school-related purchases. Senator Carol Jackson said Republican reaction to the bill was a reflection of State GOP Chairman Ralph Reed's philosophy. Senate Minority Leader Eric Johnson said it was a reflection of Republicans coming up with the idea first. Here's how it went.
I can only ask my Republican Party colleagues, is the reason you openly booed the Shop Georgia proposal when it was introduced during the State of the State because you think like your chairman, that working families and their needs are less important? Was Shop Georgia booed because working families cannot afford to pay Ralph Reed thousands of dollars to get their arguments heard in this chamber?
What happened was a single person, presumably a Republican, groaned out loud when the governor gave credit to 2 members of his party, because probably the Republican, because they have been pushing the idea of a sales tax holiday for years and years. So implying that Republicans were opposed to the sales tax holiday is false, and I believe the senator knows that.
In other news, legislation passed today in the House would help ensure that airbags are correctly reinstalled in cars that have been in an accident. House Bill 1192 makes it a crime for repair shops to cut corners when replacing those airbags. Reporter Hamilton Northcutt is joining us now to explain why this bill is necessary. Hamilton.
An airbag can save your life, so you do need to have it replaced after it deploys during an accident. You'll be surprised to hear what some auto shops do when a car is brought in for airbag repair.
A lot of folks nationwide are having these problems. When they have an accident, the airbag pops out, they send the car to a reputable dealer, they get the airbag reinstalled. Cost about $1,500 to $2,000. The unfortunate thing is some of these automobile mechanics repair places, instead of repairing the airbag, they'll take the airbag. In some cases, it's been known that the consumer will have another wreck, the airbag pops open, and out come a bunch of tin cans, aluminum cans. People are putting aluminum cans, whatever, in these things, and they say they can do that for about $50 or $100, make the thing look like it's brand new again.
Representative Mike Snow's bill would make that a misdemeanor. Debate on the House floor today focused on getting even tougher with unscrupulous repair shops.
It seems to me that a person doing such a thing, endangering people to such a degree, perhaps causing terrible injury or even death, it seems to me that such an act would call for more than simply a misdemeanor charge. It seems to me that it would be appropriate for that to be a felony.
It seems to me like that it would also be, but according to Legislative Council, this is the best we can do. And 12 months in jail might teach, and maybe a $10,000 fine might teach somebody a pretty good lesson here.
And House Bill 1192 has the support of AAA and the Auto Dealers Association of Georgia. It passed 158 to 3 and now goes to the Senate. Reporting live from the House, I'm Hamilton Northcott for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Hamilton.
The Senate tackles the supplemental budget this week. I talked with Senate Appropriations Chairman George Hooks about those midterm spending adjustments today, just moments after he came out of a meeting with Governor Roy Barnes.
Well, Gerald, as you know, the House passed the supplemental budget on Thursday. We took Friday as a day in which my subcommittees worked, and of course we're back again today. Basically, the subcommittees of the Senate will be working all of this week and throughout the weekend. We're looking to hopefully get the subcommittees of the Senate Appropriations Committee report on Friday, and it'll involve working this weekend. Basically, the revenue picture is solid. We're on solid financial ground in this state, but the severity of the recession that we're in is much worse than any of us expected really in January when the supplemental budget was written. It's a nationwide problem, and luckily we're better braced than any state in the nation, but the revenue projections and the revenue picture does not seem to be improving. As a matter of fact, we're going through the longest period of sustained flat or minus revenue that the state has gone through in 50 years.
Are we going to see any major adjustments in the Senate version of that supplemental budget? Specifically, the House put in the multimodal bus train station in Atlanta to the point of about $2.6 million. Is the Senate likely to leave that in?
Well, I can't predict at this point what we'll put in or take out. You know, we're just now starting the process, and the subcommittees have to be given the opportunity to work and exercise their power, and the departments and agencies and various people of state government. Naturally, we're going to look at everything. Everything's on the table, including the governor's recommendations. In light of the revenue picture, of course, that's in bonds. Now, we're in good shape in bonds because the interest rates, luckily, are excellent, 4.6. Georgia's one of only 9 states that can immediately make some money on bonds. Our problem is both in cash and we're going to look at the bond package. We've got to look at the size of it, what needs to be done, and how we can do it. It's too early in the week to predict what we'll take in, take out. Now, I can tell you this time next week.
Can you tell us at this point, as far as the big budget for the upcoming fiscal year is concerned, if during today's meeting there were any more recommendations for additional cuts over and above the supposed $80 million the governor is asking to be taken out?
What I can safely say is that the revenue picture is not improving. Matter of fact, it's worsening a little bit, and rather than seeing an upturn, we've been waiting weekly, almost daily, to see what we feel like is the beginning of the end, and we're not there yet. And that does have an impact on the future budget. So we're going to have to take a look at possibly some more cuts. They won't be pleasant, but we're physically solvent. Our reserves are full, and we just got to make some adjustments. And let me add here, this time last week, who knew what would happen in Walker County? The national tragedy that's grabbed international attention from all over the world has now commanded the full attention of the state agencies, all the way from natural resources to the GBI to public health, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of expense that's got to be incurred, personnel, testing, and so forth and so on. It can't be borne by this county. It shouldn't, and they've got some good people on the way, but that's an issue we're going to have to address right now in the supplemental budget, and it's that's one of the reasons we have a supplemental budget, is because of mid-year adjustments. But this is turning into a very expensive as well as horrific tragedy for the citizens involved.
Senator Hooks, we appreciate your time. We are out of time right now. Our guest has been Senator George Hooks, chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Thanks for joining us on Lawmakers.
Thank you, Gerald.
Also today, a bill to provide tax savings for Georgia's retirees passed the House. House Bill 1313 would make more investment income and earnings from CDs and 401ks tax exempt.
This proposes to increase the retirement income exclusion, which is presently at $14,000 per year. House Bill 1313 increases it $500 in tax year 2002 and an additional $500 in 2003, which would bring it up to $15,000 for the year 2003 and years after that.
House Bill 1313 passed 163-0. It moves to the Senate.
In a rare moment in the Senate today, a new senator, David Schaefer, was sworn in by the senator he replaced, Billy Ray, who is now a Superior Court judge.
That I am otherwise qualified.
That I am otherwise qualified.
To hold said office.
To hold said office.
According to the constitutions and laws of Georgia.
According to the Constitution and laws of Georgia.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Senator.
I just want to say I'm honored to be here and grateful for the opportunity that the special election voters of the 48th Senate District have given me to serve. I want to acknowledge my family, my wife Lee, my daughter Ellie, my mother Miss Sarah, and my brother-in-law Carrie, and thank them for their love and support during this campaign. I want to thank Judge Ray for taking the time from his schedule to administer the oath of office and do me that honor, and assure him that I will do the very best to continue to represent the district that he so very capably represented for the last 6 years.
Schaefer is a Republican who now represents the 48th District in Gwinnett County. We plan to speak with him later this week about his legislative agenda.
Governor Barnes' Cancer Coalition is official. At an afternoon press conference, President of the Cancer Initiative, Russ Toll, announced that the coalition is now a private nonprofit organization fully incorporated with its own board. The board, 14 strong, will, among other things, be responsible for raising some $600 million to support cancer centers to be located around the state.
I think they have to help us engage the business community in a way that we can't ourselves. I think they have to speak to the health insurance payer community in a way that we can't ourselves. I think they have to help with the fundraising, not necessarily directly for the Georgia Cancer Coalition office, but to build some foundation and business support for investing in their communities or in their regions, service regions. And I think they can really uniquely help us in that regard.
A former U.S. ambassador to the Netherlands under President Clinton, Terry Dornbush, has been tapped to chair the board. Dornbush is a two-time cancer survivor, and Toll says he brings great business contacts to the table.
I think until you've been through that, you're really not in a position to provide the kind of leadership that is the balance of good business sense combined with the human touch that I think we need to make this a success. He's got a documented success in the business world, and he's got a success in the cancer world. And it's a personal success that I think, thankfully, he can use to show others what can be done. And that this disease is not always fatal. You know, there's a perception among a large amount of the people that being told you have cancer is a death sentence. And that's the best news of the day, is that that need not be the case.
Dornbush says one of the board's first priorities will be to bring in more cancer experts and to establish those cancer centers around the state so that all patients will have access to the best cancer health care.
My personal objective beyond that is to use telecommunications so that these cancer centers will then be in touch with anyone practicing oncology in the state of Georgia, so that we'll have this state-of-the-art advice, maybe even evaluation, and preventive information available to every practitioner in the state. And then thirdly, and this is just a dream and a hope, but we would like to get this bioinformatics institute. This is the human genome, and the human genome as it applies to oncology. We would like for Georgia to become the center for that research in the country. And we've got a shot at it. We're going to work at it very hard.
As you may recall, the first cancer center is going to be at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. Russ Toll says that is coming in under budget and is on track to open early next year. Other possible cancer center sites include Rome, Augusta, Savannah, and Albany. There is money allotted in the supplemental budget for planning purposes to bring those cancer centers on board. President Toll is hoping the money stays intact despite Governor Barnes' call for more cutbacks.
It was Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Day at the Capitol today. The event attracted dozens of old and new members. Alpha Kappa Alpha sisters came from across the state to reunite for a day dedicated just to them. Members toured the Capitol as well as posed for pictures with Governor Barnes. AKA sisters also took the time to sponsor a workshop on the legislative process for Georgia youth. The group also got the chance to attend several committee meetings discussing redistricting and reapportionment.
And here are some stories that we are working on for tomorrow's Lawmakers program. The newest member of Georgia's House of Representatives will be sworn in tomorrow. Diane Grass was elected to the House from the 16th District. She is filling the seat vacated by Representative Steve Stansel. And a new bill that could change Georgia's child support system. We'll have those stories and much more tomorrow night on Lawmakers. Please join us. And for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Just visit our website at gpb.org. Lawmakers programs are streamed live, and then they are archived on our site every night that we are on the air. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for our favorite European traveler, Rick Steves, next here on GPTV.
That is our broadcast for this, the 20th Legislative Day of the Georgia General Assembly. We're at the halfway point. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Susan Hoffman. From all of us here, good night.